At Carafem, you can choose the abortion care that works best for you. With in-person visits in Atlanta, Chicago, and the D.C. area, or medically supported abortion pills by mail in 20 states. Some people feel more comfortable meeting with a provider in person and leaving either no longer pregnant or with pills in hand. Others prefer getting abortion pills by mail. Just fill out a short online form and, if eligible, your medication arrives in a few days in a plain package. When you choose abortion pills, Cara, our text-based abortion companion, is with you every step of the way, offering 24/7 support and answers whenever you need them. However you get care, Carafem will support you every step of the way. Learn more at carafem.org.
In Walmart's Who Newville, joy started to grow. For online-only savings sure to steal the show. Tech treats and toys so dazzling and new. Walmart Cyber Monday deal soon ready for you. It's online only with very little time to spare. December 1st will soon be here, so be sure to be there. The Who's are prepared. Are you ready too? A day packed with savings. Amazing! Who knew? Subject to availability, terms and fees apply.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. You're ready to move your business forward, but first, you need to find the right team. Start your search with Indeed-sponsored jobs. It can help you reach qualified candidates fast, ensuring your listing is the first one they see. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs are 90% more likely to report a hire than non-sponsored jobs. See the results for yourself. Get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Hello and welcome to this, the final film club under Aspects of History, and it's Das Boot, directed by Wolfgang Petersen and starring Jürgen Prochnow. U-boat expert and author of Wolfpack, Roger Moorhouse joins, along with filmmaker Tim Hewitt, so sit back and enjoy Das Boot. Welcome to the film club, and this is Das Boot. I hope I've pronounced that right. Roger will pick me up. Now, I suppose this is, for listeners, for Roger, this is the ultimate submarine film. Although I think to be technically accurate, it's a submersible. It's a submarine.
Yeah, that doesn't roll off the tongue quite so well, does it? Yeah,
but this is the Das Boot, the Wolfgang Petersen 1981 West German war film. So obviously it's made in West Germany, and so the Germans it is from the German perspective. This is interesting to me because shows the German U-boat war, filthy Hun weasels fighting their dirty underhand war.
Here we go. Ollie's going.
Whereas
now.
The film we did before, which was We Dive at Dawn, and that's British submariners who are splendid fellows, brave heroes. Risking life and limb for Blighty. So we get a bit of contrast between good and evil.
Well, that's really, really a brilliant point to start with, because that's very debatable. I mean, it's for a proper debate.
Good and evil?
This
good and evil. What this?
Isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, this is
the German perspective.
No, obviously, every time that they came across a British battleship, I was cheering them on and hoping that those depth charges would blow the sub to smithereens. But then again, you'd have a 10-15 minute film.
It does present some. I mean, I found that much like reading Roger's book. Actually, I did feel like your book is very pacey and thrilling, much like this movie, Roger, and it did feel a little bit like that. I mean, every time Roger's U-boats come up against the Brits, you're not on the side of the U-boat, but it's a really pacey. It's certainly in this film. It rattles along. So it's 2 hours 20 minutes, I think, the theatrical version.
We didn't watch the theatrical version, did we?
I watched the theatrical version.
You did?
Oh, you did? Okay.
Which one did you watch, Tim?
The director's cut.
Well, thank you very much. So did I. Absolutely. Yeah.
So we were 3 hours and 26 minutes.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
I have seen the director's cut.
For that. We deserve actually the U-boat cross for that.
Yeah.
You do.
a bit strange actually watching the director's cut, because it really doesn't feel like a 3-hour and 26-minute movie.
Absolutely.
How it really achieves it's quite remarkable, because it just barrels along. Even when it becomes quite solemn and the scenes of quiet and silence, which are reflective, but you don't ever feel like this is dragging. I actually own it's interesting bit of trivia. I have it on Blu-ray, of course. However, the frustrating thing is when you put the Blu-ray and press play, the default version is the dubbed into English version, which is dubbed by all the actors themselves.
Yes.
Because they're all fluent in English, except for Second Watchman, the ginger-haired antagonist type, vulgar chap.
The one with the grin.
Yes. Yeah, with the grin. Exactly. The one with the grin. Obviously, he can't speak English. I mean, what a moron.
But I read that somewhere that he went back and then overdubbed later.
Oh, is that right? Okay, so not so much
yeah.
Moron. Sorry.
I think the original,
Apologies.
he was the only one who didn't dub, but then he did return to dub it, I think.
So you can take that moron comment back then, Tim.
I retract that wholeheartedly. I'm so sorry.
Well, I think if you're a German actor, you want a career, you have to be able to speak English, presumably.
Yeah. I mean, our Germans, well, Rogers is obviously perfect, but as it should be. Was the interesting? So it's really interesting when you start, because it took me a while because I'd forgotten. You have to go back into the menu and you have to change the settings and then add on the subtitles as well, which must be terribly offensive to the Germans and the film, as particularly the filmmakers. That it's the English version that's the default, but it takes a while, so that's still playing with the English version, and it's not terrible. It's actually quite intriguing to watch, particularly knowing that it's the actors doing it themselves. And with an additional bit of trivia, the whole film was dubbed anyway because of the sounds of the set. They had to, so essentially they reenacted the whole thing twice in post-production.
Wow.
Which is actually quite remarkable.
It was filmed over a year. It took a year to make, I think.
In sequence.
Yeah. Yeah, it's bonkers because the noise of the engine and everything and the hydraulics to move around the submersible overpowered the voices in recordings.
And in fact, when you do watch it, knowing that fact, you can actually now sort of tell that the sound quality of the voices is just a little bit different to the atmosphere around them.
That's a very technical. I mean, it's an interesting point, Tim, but that's obviously your technical ear is picking that up.
Well, yeah, that's the first thing I picked up about your microphone.
Yeah. But I didn't notice that at all. I mean, I think that's your expertise shining through. You're showing your expertise, Tim. Well done.
Well, I'll just quickly run through a few basics. So, as I said, Wolfgang Petersen, who is an German director, and it was released in September 1981. It was the most expensive West German film ever made, which I think probably included, if you include East Germany, it's highly likely to have been. And so that's around 32 million Deutschmarks, if anyone remembers Deutschmarks, well done. And that equates to around 17 million euros, which, and then in the box office, though, it did really well. Modern day estimates around $260 million in the box office, 80 odd million at the time. So it's a wildly successful film, which, of course, it's successful in Germany. I think made $5 million in $5 million in the first weekend, which is a record. But clearly that shows that there were lots of English-speaking audiences watching. But presumably they were watching the English dub version in the cinema, Tim, as you've just.
Well, particularly in America, I'm assuming that they would, if they in America, if they watched a dub version of Trainspotting, they're definitely going to have watched the dub version of this. But it did, extraordinarily well for the fact that it was nominated for 6 Oscars, including Best Director. So for a foreign language film in that period in the 80s, that's pretty important.
Yeah.
And Wolfgang Petersen was, because I think he died.
He did die 3 years ago. Very sad.
It's a shame. Great. Went on to, a properly good Hollywood career. The film he made after this was The Neverending Story.
Great film.
It's a bit of a childhood favorite of mine.
Yeah.
And then a great thriller called Shattered with Tom Berenger and Bob Hoskins, which is very underrated, and I recommend it. It keeps you guessing. There's a great twist. And then, of course, In the Line of Fire with Clint Eastwood and John Malkovich. Great.
Rene Russo. Don't forget Rene Russo.
Rene Russo. Sorry, and Rene Russo. Great director.
Yeah, and I think my favourite of his might be the Perfect Storm, the Clooney flick.
Oh, that was a great film.
That interesting.
I think that's one of the earliest films where you had the development of kind of home cinema with surround sound and everything. And I played that at top volume, and it was like being on the, I think the Enola Gay. I can't remember what the name of the ship was.
Enola Gay, I'll tell you that.
Yes, but like being in it.
Sound design. I agree. I wasn't massive fan of the rather overwritten script, especially when Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio screams, "You're heading right into the monster," and I just thought, would a weather woman say that? Sorry.
Would anyone? Yeah. Well,
yeah. Would anyone?
Very good film, though.
Talking about? Sorry, go on, Roger.
I was going to say, to come back to Das Boot.
Yeah.
It's interesting what Ollie said about the success in Germany, because it was not uncontroversial. Now, that doesn't, of course, mean much in terms of its success at the box office, but it was certainly controversial in Germany, because this is 81. The vast swathe of those that survive, and without wanting to reprise my book, 3/4 of U-boatmen don't survive the war. It's the highest death rate of any arm of service in any war. But anyway, of those that survived, and certainly veterans of the war generally, a lot of them are still around in the 1980s, and this is it's not uncontroversial, put it that way, to portray the war in a as sympathetic or empathetic a way as this film does. You could say it's still controversial now, but it was absolutely controversial in 1981. There were lots of complaints about, are we allowed to, sort of sympathise with these boys? Is this something that's acceptable? Is this neo-Nazism on screen? All that sort of thing, rumbling around. So it was a really controversial film at the time, and I think, to some extent outside Germany, but I think outside Germany we were able perhaps to sort of shelve concerns like that the Germans weren't. So I just wanted to put that little bit of gloss on Ollie's comment about it being successful in Germany. Yes, it was successful. It was also hugely controversial.
Which is why I suppose that... Oh, sorry, Ollie.
Go on.
No, I was just going to add to that, leading on in terms of the characterization, which is why I suppose it was not only necessary, but interesting for audiences that the captain... Well, not only him, but quite a few of them were obviously not pro-Nazi. And that juxtaposition between the clear Nazi character, proper, prim, extraordinarily tedious about every little detail, OCD maybe, which makes the sympathetic viewpoint a little bit more palatable. These boys were just ordered to do this. Not everyone, I'm assuming, in the German army or military were Nazis.
No, exactly.
And didn't agree. He really goes off on one a bit at one of their dinners.
Yeah.
So I suppose that made it, for all the controversy going into the film, it must have had a little bit of a cleansing notion for West Germany, or even people who've been in it.
I would go a bit further than that, Tim, and say there's a degree of sort of exculpation going on, because even that character, the Nazi character, as you said, the prim and proper, I mean, he's the first, the Einsfeld, or the first watch officer. He is a foreigner, if you remember, right? He's a Mexican. He's a Volksdeutscher.
Grew up in Mexico,
raised in Mexico, right? So he's one. The character is someone who is, thoroughly infused by Germany's Renaissance under Hitler and Nazism for everything that it stood for, but he's doing it as an outsider. So even in the film, he's been othered. Like the Nazi has been othered. It's not us. It's it's someone from somewhere else, right? So I think there's a strong whiff, even with my most sympathetic hat on. There's a strong whiff of exculpation going on there. It wasn't us; it was someone else, right?
Yeah,
interesting.
Definitely.
I was wondering about the Mexican element. I mean, did that? You've read the book, I assume. And I assume that this is sort of in the book. In that, the Mexican element, is that? Did he come from a kind of Mennonite? You had these Mennonites, sort of German extraction, who would go and farm in Central America.
Yeah.
I wonder if he was.
I don't know precisely the background of him, but I mean, there were lots of Germans that left in the 19th century, and then also after 1919, Versailles and all of that, the collapse of Germany in that period, which of course is the seedbed of Nazism, but it's also the seedbed for a vast swathe of Germans to leave the country and go and settle elsewhere. So he could have been any of those. Obviously it's fictional, but. There were those communities right across the Americas, actually, and it was not implausible that he could have been raised in Mexico. Yeah.
Okay. Well, just a little bit more on the production of this film. So, as I mentioned, it was very expensive. They basically had to build. It's quite clever the way they did it. They built two towers, didn't they? One that would go underwater, and the other one that would. Sit above ground for all the shots when they're above
two
water.
Conning towers, to clarify. 2 conning towers. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Yes.
Yes, it would have been very difficult to.
It could have been anything.
And well, it's not actually a submarine, though, is it? It's a submersible. So, what's the difference, Roger? Just remind us.
Submersibles are designed to spend most of the time on the surface, but can submerge, either to attack or to evade attack. A submarine is essentially the opposite. It's designed to spend most of its time submerged. So the submarine they start the war with, which is the one that's depicted in this, is a Type 7, which is technically a submersible. The submarine that the Germans end the war with, which is the Type 21, which is a very, very different animal, is the first real submarine, because it is designed to spend most of its time underwater. So there's a fundamental difference. It might, to the layman, this stuff probably doesn't matter, but there is a kind of fundamental difference in terms of design and in terms of how you deploy it, on that basis.
And when you said the Type 21 was the first submarine, do you mean it was the first submarine full stop?
Yeah, the first genuine submarine in that it was designed and intended to spend most of its time submerged.
Oh, right. So the Allies hadn't managed to produce one.
No. So the Allies have submersibles as well.
Right. Interesting. Yeah. Okay.
That's interesting.
The other thing I have been itching to question, but ask you, but haven't for fear of looking like an idiot. But the U in U-96, does that mean Unterwasser? What does it mean?
Unterseeboot.
Under the boat?
Undersea boat.
Undersea boat, right.
Yes. Yeah.
Unterseeboot. Right. Good. You like my
for
pronunciation.
For someone that spent most of their youth, as I understand it, in Germany, Ollie, your German is really not that great.
No, my German is kleiner Bat. It's based around Commando comics.
Yes,
so Donner und Blitzen
and all American-made World War II films that involve Germans, because you naturally, increase your volume when you speak German.
Yes, I become a lot more aggressive when I speak
Yeah.
German.
But
Like
basically,
Basil Fawlty as well.
it's the go-to. It's the go-to.
Two-pronged
Yes.
pebbles.
Yeah, last time I deployed it was in I think a cafe in the Black Forest, and the lady in the cafe looked really alarmed when I started speaking.
Well, actually,
German.
I have noticed that every time we mention the title of this film, we do shout it for some reason. I don't quite understand why. It's very difficult to say it quietly.
Right. So yes, moving on. Right.
So can I do a little bit on the history of on the history that this is based on?
Yes.
Because I think that's quite a significant point. So the Das Boot comes from originally from a novel written by a chap called Lothar Gunther Buchheim, which was published in, I think, the early 1970s, about 1973, and that was quite successful as well. It kind of is essentially the same story as is shown in the film. If anything, it's a bit darker, which sounds a bit hard to kind of fathom, but it is rather darker in tone. And Buchheim, interestingly, had been a war reporter during the war, so he was actually an art historian as well, but he was a war reporter during the war and was sent as a young man on at least one mission aboard U-96. And U-96, this mission he went on in November of 1941, is pretty unremarkable in sort of U-boat history, but it's nonetheless the basis for his novel Das Boot. So it's slightly elaborated upon, it's slightly embellished. You know, in the original mission, they sank one Allied merchantman. In the novel, they sink, I think, 2 or 3. But essentially, it follows the same pattern, with the exception of the rather dramatic ending of the film, and of the book, where they are subject to an air raid in La Rochelle, and everyone dies at the end. Spoiler alert, sorry people. That doesn't obviously happen in real life. U-96 actually survives right to the end of the war. It's finally scuttled in 1945. But it is based on a mission that Lothar Gunther Buchheim had participated in as a war reporter. And crucially, as I say, it was a fairly unremarkable mission. So in a way, what we look at when we watch that film and sort of gasp, I mean, of course, it's embellished and so on, but it's an account of a relatively unremarkable U-boat patrol, is my point, which is, I think, is quite a sort of shocking point to make.
So surely, so then this shows that all the patrols were remarkable, but this was unremarkable for its sort of standard remarkability.
Yeah.
Hard to imagine what a remarkable one would be.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think a really remarkable one, obviously, you don't come back from, but as they go, this is it would barely feature in the sort of the annals of the U-boat story.
But given the statistics
would not feature at all.
Given the numbers you've mentioned, in that 75% don't return, then surely this is remarkable, because it's 1 in 4 that I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, when in 1941 the odds are much better for U-boat crews. I mean, obviously the 75% is across the whole war. So in 41, obviously that's another interesting point actually about this, which I think is not deliberate on Buchheim's part, because, as I said, it was based on a patrol that he went on in November 1941. But in a sense, if there had been a choice for him to set his story in a particular time, then that winter of 41-42 would have been a really good choice, because it's kind of one of those tipping points where the early phase, what they called the happy time, when they're sort of scoring good numbers and Allied countermeasures are really not up to speed. So it's almost, they almost have sort of free field in terms of attacking convoys and so on, and they're scoring really good numbers. That time is gone, and they're not yet, it's not yet clear what's coming, but there's a shadow over them in that time in real life, I mean. So in a sense, he couldn't have picked a better time to have had gone on his patrol and then subsequently written the book about that period, because it is in one of those tipping points in history where there's a sort of shadow that this is not going to go well. The good times are finished, and we're up against it, and we can't yet see the pattern of what's coming.
Does that make the scene then, based on what you say about remarkable and unremarkable, where they land, they get to land in Vigo?
Yeah.
And there's that, extremely enticing food on the table, and they're all essentially revered and labeled as heroes.
Yes.
Is that, would that have been the reaction then?
Yeah, absolutely. Because that first generation of U-boat commanders and U-boat crews were held up absolutely as national heroes. They had their faces were on the front page of the newspapers. They met Hitler. They got garlanded with medals and honors and all the rest of it. They were paraded around Germany on lecture tours. So that absolutely fits, because that was the generation. And actually, in real life, so if we say from November 41, that first generation of those commanders was already dead, effectively, or out of the frame. People like Günter Prien died in March 41. Joachim Schepken in March 41. Otto Kretschmer had been taken prisoner. So most of those sort of national heroes as U-boatmen were already gone. So in a sense, you're living off the fumes of that mythology already. So that that's a really telling scene. You're right, Tim, because they are being sort of lauded like sort of heroes and almost like pop stars.
Yeah, and it's interesting that Prochnow says, he's sort of staring into the abyss of the food on the table, and he says, it was almost, the exact line was, essentially, that was a close one, or we almost didn't make it, or something.
Yeah.
And the guy was like, that's the talk of a hero.
Yes, exactly.
And what would have been interesting to know is whether all the crew at the time, whether they all knew that it was highly unlikely that they were going to go home.
Well, we're not yet in. This is why it's interesting. We're not yet. Post 43 really is when they
cotton on to the fact.
Then they're cotton on because they know that other crews are being lost at hand over fist. So that's where the statistics turn very much against them, and it's pretty obvious to everyone that they are genuinely risking their lives every time they go out. Statistically, it's clear that after 41, you're down to a lifespan statistically of about 2 missions, right? It's hideous. But in 41, that's why it's interesting. In 41, we're not yet there. So you're still living on the fumes of the sort of the easy victories and the heroism of the early phase. But it's clear that something is changing and you can't yet see what it is. So that's why I think it's kind of a really interesting moment. And as I said, this wasn't Buchheim. He didn't just pick it because that's when he did his patrol. So that's when he based it. But if he could have picked it, it would be a perfect time to have. Well,
you've mentioned Jürgen Prochnow.
Yeah.
Probably pronounced that wrong. But this is his kind of pathway into Hollywood, and I just wanted to mention a few of the films he's done after. He did Dune, the 1980s one, I'm afraid.
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
David Lynch.
He was also in the excellent sequel to Beverly Hills Cop 2.
I knew you were going to say it was good.
It is good. And
highly inferior to the first one.
I agree. Well, I wouldn't it was not as good, but still excellent. And then he was very good in a film that not many people have seen. I went to the cinema with my father on a rare occasion where I spent time with my dad at that age, just me and him. And that was a dry white season, which is a film about apartheid with Donald Sutherland, Marlon Brando, and Janet Suzman. He plays, guess what, the bad guy. And
obviously Hollywood were extraordinarily close-minded at the time.
Yeah, if you're a German or British actor, you play a bad guy. And then you had...
Still do play bad guys, don't they?
Yeah. He was also in Robin Hood in the early 90s, but not the Costner one, the Patrick.
No, the other one.
Yeah.
The one that came out basically at the same time.
Yes, I know. I know.
Weird.
I mean, what are the chances?
He was also in The English Patient.
Well, I was going to mention that. I think he sort of hauls his career back with The English Patient. He's excellent as the German officer who goes, "Oh, Geneva Convention."
Yeah.
Tear up the Geneva Convention, which is.
But is it fair to say never better than in Desport?
I
No,
think that's certainly fair enough.
He is absolutely magnetic in this. He's mesmerically good.
He is very good in this.
I wouldn't say he carries the film because it's a very, very good film, but astonishing. I think he's brilliant in this.
Well, when we come to our awards, we can drill into this a little bit more, but I think there are some really strong performances throughout, and that's why it's a shame you didn't see many of the other actors. Really, I guess we're being very. We're not really being very fair here because, for all we know, and Roger will know better than Tim and I, they had very good careers in Germany itself. They didn't need to go to Hollywood. My point being, we're sort of describing Hollywood as you
only make it if you are in a Hollywood film.
Yeah, exactly, which of course isn't the case.
Yeah.
But
I mean, there are some very good German actors that haven't done that, and German cinema is a pretty strong field anyway. So I think that's sort of betraying our Anglo.
Absolutely.
I think that's absolutely right. Yeah. Mea culpa there. Well done. Right. So the one thing I wanted to mention is that the author, Lothar Gunther Buchheim, who you mentioned, was not hugely enamoured by the film, was he, Roger?
No, interestingly, yes. He was, let's face it, he was one of those people that I think nowadays we would probably call a right pain in the arse. He was, obsessed with his own brilliance. And when the film was made, he was actually banned from the set because he was brought in as a sort of, obviously as the author, he was brought in as an assistant producer or whatever it was. And was eventually banned from the set because he was interfering too much and saying, "Well, it wasn't like that. Why are you doing it like this?" So being a pain inside. And they had two commanders, former U-boat commanders, in as advisors anyway, alongside him. One of whom being Heinrich Lehmann Willenbrock, who had commanded U-96, right? So they had enough voices there to sort of guide the thing along. Hence the authenticity, which we'll come back to, I'm sure, later on. So he was a pain in the backside, and basically initially when it came out, he sort of disavowed it and said, "Well, it's not the vision that I had. It's not the vision that I portrayed in the book." He did soften somewhat. I mean, success and becoming a millionaire overnight probably tends to do that to you. He did soften somewhat. He later said that the longer form that the thing got, so the director's cut, as we said, is 3.5 hours, near enough. And then you've got the sort of mini-series TV version, which is 6 hours. He liked them because apparently, obviously longer form was nicer. But I think it might be just because he had a bulging bank balance by that point. So he realised that there was benefit to be had in sort of giving it his stamp of approval rather than the opposite. But he was
typical authors, really.
Well, yeah, in the sense of a kind of a kind of absurdly sort of self-centered artiste in that sense. I mean, not all authors are like that, Tim.
If I wanted to make a film of Wolfpack, would you be on set interfering?
I would be interfering every single time.
That's not the way. That's not the way it was.
But no, I mean, he is a difficult character.
I mean, that's actually quite a typical way productions, when they're adapted from novels, tend to go.
I'm sure.
How could you not want to let go, in some way to something that you essentially, that's all because of you. It's kind of like that cliche. The announcement on set would be, and here's the author, Roger, and we're here because of him. But now shut up and leave us alone. It's kind of.
No, I completely get that. But I think even bearing all of that in mind, he was a rather difficult, spiky character. There are enough accounts from other people saying that this guy was impossible. So I think that's.
And it could have been even worse for him. But and ironically, when we were talking about making it in film, you have to have made it in Hollywood. This originally was going to be a Hollywood film.
Yeah.
Yes, we should talk about the potential cast for
Was Redford and Newman.
Yeah, Paul Newman, or not the third Redford and Newman movies.
No,
rather...
but Redford was originally, I think, touted for the lead, and then Paul Newman. But I'm not sure who the directors were.
Yeah, it's
they were
difficult
trying
to find that.
Yeah,
and I mean, we mentioned Jürgen Prochnow being this is sort of his peak, which he'd probably stiffen at if given he was quite young when he made it, relatively so. But also Wolfgang Petersen, is this his peak? Because he did make the absolutely the complete disgrace that is Troy.
Yes, he did, and I'm wondering whether that was purely for the bank balance.
The money.
I mean, that was truly. Maybe we should do that film purely because we should also do films that we absolutely detest.
Hate.
Yeah,
so that we can,
that one a good
we can really vent. But I mean, that's genuinely hands down the worst film he made. I think The Perfect Storm wasn't great, so I'm a bit out of it. Okay. I know Ollie looking very aghast, but Troy definitely. This I would say this is his best film that he did. I mean, it's extraordinary. The fact that it's in his mother tongue.
Here you go. I was going to say, let me just come in with a paean of praise to excuse me, a paean of praise for the authenticity of it. Because if you watch the film closely, which I did for 3.5 hours, and I'm sure you did too. This is a patrol which stretches over many weeks. It's not immediately made clear. They don't give any dates as to how long it is, but we can rest assured it's probably a month at least that they're out, right? And if you watch, you will realise that the captain, Jürgen Prochnow, is wearing the same shirt all the way through. He's wearing a checked shirt underneath his jumper, right? The radio operator is wearing the same jumper because it's quite a distinctive look pattern they've got on. They all grow those elaborate beards. They are filthy throughout, right? They're all absolutely filthy. And it's little things like that you sort of notice, in a sense, after you've read Wolfpack by Roger Moorhouse, then you get the historical background to all this, that they basically didn't wash. It was filthy on board. There's oil everywhere, the opportunities for washing are extremely limited and basically confined to seawater only, so most people didn't do it. So they basically stink. They're wearing the same clothes for a month in extremely hard work and revoltingly dirty conditions. And to cap all of this, when you get to the very end of the film, when they come back to La Rochelle, so not only, as I said, wearing the same clothes and so on, getting soaked with seawater, all the time, sweat. I mean, it would have been hideous. The U-boats stink. If you want to know about the U-boat stink, read the book. But then they come into La Rochelle at the end, and the crew are all lined up on the deck as they come in, and it pans across them. The camera pans across them, and all of the crew have got sores on their faces, right? Did anyone notice that? And that's exactly how they had skin infections, they had boils, they're all completely pale because they've been on, below deck for a month, right? So, and that interesting. I went to an event where we had the director of Bavaria Studios, the current director of Bavaria Studios, who's an expert on all of this because that's where they made the film, and he was talking about the crew being banned from, essentially going out in the sun for the year that they were making the film. They basically said, don't go out in the sun. You can't go skiing. You can't go out in the summer. You can't go have a holiday in Ibiza. You've basically got to be pale, pasty, and look pretty sick. You must have vitamin D deficiency. Yeah. It's what part of the contract? Yeah, exactly. So they all had to do that. And you look at that, it pans across the crew at the end. And as I said, they've all got sores on their faces. They're pale and pasty. They look sick. And I'm having done the book and been immersed, no pun intended, in this world, pun intended, in this world for the last sort of 2 or 3 years, that it just screamed at me that the sort of the authenticity of it, I thought was absolutely fantastic.
Yeah,
Oh,
definitely. And I think it would have been, imagine that, well, good question, in fact, for Roger, what the controversy would have been had it been made by Americans, starring Americans, with essentially sympathetic Nazi characters. I mean,
also Redford and Newman aren't going to not go out for a year.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good question. I mean, I wonder how. I think Redford
lived on a ranch in the knee. He's not going to not go riding.
That's true, but Sun. I'm not sure that you would have been able to convince them. But I mean, he sort of did a little. I wouldn't say method, but he did a bit of. I think he considered himself an actor before a star. Jeremiah Johnson. I think he kind of went to lengths to immerse himself. No pun intended. And Newman, I don't know, but it would have been interesting to see how it would have been received had it been made by Hollywood.
I think it would have been another, certainly from a German perspective, it would have been another black mark. I mean, it was a controversial film anyway, even with the authenticity of it, the Germanness of it. I mean, we've made this ourselves. It was done by Bavaria, and it's a very good piece of cinema. You can argue about the politics. You can argue about the aspect of remembrance or not, and so on. But it's a brilliant piece of cinema. So they could console themselves with the fact, even though they might have found it controversial and troubling, that it was a really good piece of German cinema, right? And it's authentic. It's got that authenticity. I think if it had been made in Hollywood with Hollywood stars who didn't necessarily, and with different production values, where maybe 1980s, I suppose, war films still, particularly Hollywood films, still have clean uniforms. It's still, they're not yet really representing the filth that war means. I mean, we talked about The Cross of Iron a few episodes back, which is 77, I think it was, and to my mind, that's one of the first Hollywood films that shows people in war filthy. Right?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's sort of the equivalent.
I think A Bridge Too Far as well. They're looking pretty dirty in that.
Yeah, sort of, but I don't think on the same level. And it's sort of the equivalent. I've always thought it's the equivalent of the Western, where Hollywood for decades was making Westerns where everybody is pristine.
Yeah.
In probably the most disgusting era that potentially humans have ever seen in terms of a developed nation.
Yeah.
And it took, in fact, the Italians
and all that.
to come along and go, by the way, in that period, you were all filthy, lawless, and disgusting. And sort of Hollywood cottoned on and went, oh, actually, you're right. And then Eastwood came along and went, it's the way they're doing it's better. And I think it took it took the same approach. And it's great. Thank God it was made by Germans, this film, because what I also think is remarkable about it is the fact that it was made in 1981. It sort of defies an era in terms of filmmaking. It doesn't feel. I think if you knew nothing about it and you watched it, you would never think this is an 80s film. It's just got a style that is, in fact, very modern.
Yeah, it's a bit like Raging Bull in that regard, in that they're both made in the 80s, aren't they?
Yeah. Raging Bull, you could sort of think it's kind of like a hangover from the 70s, because it technically, I think, was actually, conceived in 79.
But I think the same with this.
And exactly the same. And I think it is very modern. I remember watching it the last time I've watched it. I actually thought, this could have been made by Kubrick. It's got, if Kubrick made a submersible film, I can see a sort of style that he'd adopt. In the same vein as Peterson, the way the camera moves, the way he's actually. It's amazing how mobile the camera is in such confined space.
Yeah.
Not only lengthwise, but kind of horizontally on the horizontal plane. The way it kind of tracks the remarkable rushing forward with the actors through the whole of the length of the submarine. It feels a little bit like if Kubrick made a film, this would have been it. And in that sense, I think it defies an era. It doesn't feel like it slots into either an 80s film or a 70s film it's sort of like timeless.
Yeah.
And I think that's a remarkable piece of cinema, if you can do that.
I agree. I mean, it is thoroughly remarkable, and the intensity of it for that 3.5 hours. As you said, it doesn't feel like 3.5 hours at all, but the intensity of it. I mean, I was at a public screening of this. Well, it was an event. It wasn't public, but an event a couple of weeks ago, and that final scene, when that final scene closes and the credits roll, there was an audible kind of breathing out from 100 people in that room. All of whom I think had been holding their breath for the last half an hour. I mean, it was just astonishing. The tension is just incredible.
It doesn't give you a chance to. I mean, at the beginning, they're sort of setting off, but as soon as they're off, it just dives, excuse the pun, into proper tension and suspense. Yeah. They don't. I was just harking back to what Ollie was saying about surround sound, I think, at the beginning with Perfect Storm. I fortunately have surround sound, and with the 5.1 sound design of the Blu-ray, it's absolutely amazing because you hear every little notch creak, the sea, every.
I think we're all going to have to come round to your house, Tim.
Yeah,
and listen to it again.
And it just goes round you, and it's remarkable. It's brilliant.
And one thing, one of my great bugbears, particularly in modern films, as you'll know from the last few months of doing this, is characterization. Right, characterization on this is brilliant, and considering you're working with material in a second language, but still the characters come through. Jürgen Prochnow's character, he's war weary a bit, but loves his boys, and he's a sailor, right? He loves everything naval. There's that scene where he's up on the conning tower with the spray in his face, and he's saying, "Oh, I remember when we were sailing on the a three-masted schooner," and he's absolutely a naval man, right? So the characters are allowed to develop, and
it's actually
through.
If you think about the feat of creating rounded characters through a 3.5 hour film that's full of tension and essentially action, with little room to focus in on inner life backstories, that sort of thing. It sort of like comes through on little points throughout the film, kind of little inklings of character, but sort of by the end you kind of see
by the end them, right?
yeah absolutely. You've spent we'll get on to Ollie's favorite category, but what Quentin Tarantino calls like a hangout movie. I mean, it's full of suspense. There's not there is a plot. It's not that they're not doing anything, but you really are hanging out with them inside in that boat.
We're just hanging out with them in a pretty awful place,
in a shit environment. And what you said about them stinking and it being, I mean, thinking about actually really early on when the guy's showing Werner around, and he goes, and that's where you go to the loo. I mean, I was like, oh my god, this like literally my ultimate nightmare is such claustrophobia, and not that I'm a claustrophobic, but having to share the same. I mean, it's absolutely hideous. And when they're putting oil on the bloody torpedoes,
yes, I was fascinated by that. Grease on the to make it go quicker.
Grease on the torpedoes, no, just so they can get into the tubes easier and then fire properly. I mean,
would it glide through the water if it had grease in it?
No, not necessarily. I don't think that makes a massive difference.
Okay.
It's about the launch procedure, because you don't want it to not launch when it's supposed to go.
No.
I mean, we could go further, analytically.
Well, I think we should do our categories.
And we can do our categories. I was just going to say we can go further and analytically about the sexual symbolism and undertones of the film.
No, let's
we won't do
think
that because
well, you just mentioned it, so now everyone's thinking of it. Right, let's.
Well, I would say
the Greece torpedoes, Tim. Is that where you've gone with this?
Well, no. If you actually, I mean, it is a genuine point. That I think there is a certain amount of that through the film.
There is a bit of
that being one example.
the
way he refers to the Straits of Gibraltar, very, very, I think, blatant symbolism in his line about. Well, it's pretty uncouth, so I shouldn't really say it on air. But
you can say whatever you like. There's no censorship here.
Tight as a virgin is, I think he says.
Right. I mean, I love the Gibraltar bit. I have to say, we can mention that in the categories. But great.
Let's do our
causing the Germans trouble. Right. So, best scene.
Wow.
Now,
and it almost feels like one big scene.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
I've got a few.
Well, why don't you go ahead, Tim?
Definitely Stuck at the Bottom.
Yes.
So what? Right towards the end of the film.
Yeah, towards the end, and that blends into The Rise because it's a great moment.
That is an awesome scene. The Rise is amazing. Yes.
I actually thought the bit when they break through the water and they're all sucking in the sort of precious fresh air.
Yeah. And then, that could all kind of lead into the sort of the same scene.
Yeah, and the sub sort of bursts, and when it's up and running, the engines are working, and it's bursting, and it's got wonderful shot of the sub bursting through the surf.
Yeah.
Yes.
Looking great.
I would just add in the breakdown scene of Johan. Where he loses his
definitely.
mind. We have to consider that because I think that's a fabulous scene.
I think he's in for a shout for supporting.
I think he should be also, but we'll get to that. But also, what about the scene where they murder civilians on in the merchant navy?
Help me!
Yeah.
Now that you get the merchantmen jumping off the water.
Yes.
And there they are with their binos blaming the British the Royal Navy for not saving them.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's awful.
Yeah, definitely.
I have a technical question for Roger here. Under prize rules, weren't they obligated to actually pick those guys up?
Yes, but prize rules are kind of being honoured and breached by that point. That's by late 41, and it's also in convoys, so it was too. I mean, they are still saving in isolated examples. The Laconia, for example, is September 42. So they're still saving crews where it's sort of sensible and possible to do so. They will still try. But given that particular scene, the vessel concerned was in convoy, so they were expecting that the destroyers would come, not only to attack them, but also to save the survivors anyway. So in that scenario, it's just not practical to try and apply prize rules. But that scene does at least show the ambivalence that they're kind of going. There's a human urge to assist. That they're then
among some of them, yes.
Among some of them, and some not, of course. But I think that was actually quite fairly drawn, that scene.
Yeah, absolutely, completely, very much so. I thought that was quite a good scene, though, because you can even hear the merchantman calling out, "Help me, help me."
Yeah. No, it's a very good scene. Yeah, it is. But again, go right back to the beginning. Go right back to Tom's in the bar at the beginning, and that sort of bacchanal, and that's the shock of the new crewman, and particularly the uptight Nazi, sort of looking around him at these men who are absolutely paralytic. Toasting their survival from the previous mission or whatever it is, but absolutely paralytic and badly behaved and all of that. And he's going, what the hell sort of world have I just come into? I mean, that's a fabulous scene.
It is.
And then Thomson turns up to see them off from the quayside the following morning, and he looks exactly the same as he did the night before. Like, that's like, even sober, that's obviously his default look, right? I thought that was brilliant.
Yeah. Okay. Great. All right. What should we go with then?
I'd add like the long depth charge attack, the kind of extended one, which I think is the second one.
Yeah.
Is pretty suspenseful, and I actually love the dinner when they're when they arrive and it's all laid out. And I think the atmosphere there is brilliant.
You mean on the supply ship?
Yeah.
Yeah,
When they go to Vigo.
That's a brilliant one. And they did do that. Their supply was a sort of constant problem. So they did have these, Spain was nominally neutral, but it did allow German vessels to moor up in its ports that could then be used by U-boats at night so that no one would see and so on. So that's absolutely exactly what they did. But that is a brilliant scene for the reasons you said before, Tim, about the sort of counterpoint between the reception that they get and the sort of reality that they feel.
And Prochnow is really good in that, because you don't quite know how he's going to react.
You keep on expecting him to sort of blow up and start shouting.
And in fact, you're on the edge of your seat in that scene, which I think is brilliant.
No, I agree. I think that's a contender for me. But so the rise, Johan, the Vigo fly scene. There's so many. It's too good.
Okay, what are we gonna pick then?
Well, go Tim.
I mean, I think I'm going to nominate the bit towards the end of the problems that they've been having, is then when they're staring at the dial,
Yes.
Ignoring it.
Absolutely.
And that's 280 meters down, I think they are.
Yeah.
That's quite deep. I mean, standard diving watches, I think, go around 300 meters. That's deep.
Yeah, that is deep. And the crush depth that was type 7C, I think it was. Crush depth from memory is around 250. So it is absolutely beyond what it should be able to take, So,
Vorsprung duck technique.
We love that, and talk about sound designers when they do go deeper and deeper the first time, and it starts to creak. Yeah. It's so good.
You get nuts and bolts flying around there. Yeah. It's brilliant. Yeah. Okay, right. Well, we have to nominate a scene. So we're faffing around. We'll go with the rise at the depths of the Straits of Gibraltar.
Yeah, go on.
Okay, most inaccurate. Right, Roger, over to you here.
Well, I think the authenticity of it is absolutely top notch, as I said before. I mean, really exemplary. The only thing, and I sort of heard this from the guy the guy that ran the studio, and he told it, as a sort of almost as a joke. But when you watch it back, you realise that obviously this is 1981. There's no CGI and so on. A lot of those scenes where the sort of the scenes where it's pulled back, the camera's panned right back, and you get the seascape, and then you get the submarine on the surface and so on. They're all models, and it's all being done in a tank, and it's. I mean, I hadn't really noticed, or I've sort of willed myself not to notice, I suppose, before. But when he pointed it out, he said these were scale models, and they had little puppets on the top, and they were doing it in the sea apparently. So they had them in the sea, but they were with little scale models. And he said that the seagulls took a particular liking to these puppets, so they used to be swooped upon by seagulls. So a lot of the cutting room floor material is of their puppets being stolen by giant seagulls.
Giant seagulls.
It's a wonderful image. So, and then once you hear that and you rewatch it, go, yeah, you can see it's puppets, But I mean, that's obviously a production thing. They couldn't get around.
Yeah.
So it's not criticism, it's just to point it out. And I think it's quite a funny story anyway. But in terms of authenticity, I think it's brilliant,
Great stuff. All right. Performance. So I thought for the actual best performance, there were really 3 nominations. And of course, Jürgen Prochnow is one of them. I thought the other one, though, the chief, Klaus Veneman, I think, is the actor.
Yes.
I thought he was the lead, really good.
The lead
Very
engineer. He's really good. I had him on. It's a really understated performance.
Yes.
He's brilliant in it. Absolutely right.
Very subtle.
Yeah, very subtle.
And the third being Herbert Gronemeyer, who's our sort of narrator in a way. Yeah. But I actually thought that Veneman was so good that Jürgen Prochnow's place as the sort of assured winner is looking unsafe, because I thought Veneman was that good.
Oh, really? Oh,
Yeah.
dear.
I thought he was that good, but I think Prochnow is just he's kind of the lead.
Yeah.
He
can't
is,
not
but there's a lot of
notice him.
moping around and going, "Oh, woe is me." Whereas Venom was up and at him, I'm not having this. We're going to fix the bloody boat.
He is,
Prochnow
yeah, but
mopes around that vessel, going, "Oh,
no, but Prochnow, but when he knuckles down, he's the one that's like,
Yeah.
when
he's
I
delicate.
order it, or when I give the order, and he's the one that roused the troops and gets.
Well, I think it's a film of two halves. I think in the first half he is like that, but then in the second half he's sort of rather a little bit more subdued performance from Prochnow.
Yeah, I think which is a interesting arc.
Yes,
and kudos to the performer.
Yeah.
But I just thought that the Venom character was.
Yeah, he was very. Can I also give an honourable mention to the character called Hinrich, who's the radio and sonar man, wearing a very colourful jumper. Who's the actor was called Heinz Hernig, and I thought that was another one that really
that will be in our supporting, I think.
Yeah, supporting, of course. Yeah,
Let's deal with the.
If you're talking leads, I honestly, with all due respect to Klaus Veneman, I can't see past Jürgen Prochnow.
No.
Sorry.
Okay, fair enough. Well, he wins then. An honourable mention to Veneman, who very sadly died at a young age, only 60, of lung cancer. Yeah. He was very good friends with Jürgen Prochnow.
Yeah, that was a great performance.
Right, supporting,
and he does refer to Goering as a fat something or other, I can't remember. And I just, you gotta, he's basically having a massive go against the Nazis, so you got to give him.
Yeah.
I mean, we could nominate him as a support as well. So
he's British at heart, for God's sakes.
Yes.
On outside.
Right, supporting. Okay, so again, I found it difficult to look beyond Erwin Leder.
Yeah, Erwin Leder. Yeah,
yes.
Johann, das Gespenst.
Yes, the chief mechanic.
Yeah. Who has this sort of almost erotic relationship with his engines.
Yeah, he loves it, doesn't he?
Really wonderful.
The whole listening.
Yeah, the listening to the engine and the valves that you can open and the sort of the flames come out. So, I mean, I just loved that. And then the fact, when he loses his mind, as we said, is a great scene. But then how he then has to redeem himself from.
Yeah, he pulls himself together.
Yeah, and he pulls himself together. But then he's sort of central in, saving them when they're on the bottom. So, essentially saves himself from court martial. So, I mean, he's a great character in that. And,
yeah, definitely.
And he's got a real face for radio as well.
He does. But it's a hugely distinctive face that, I mean, with that, because some of them have beards that, you have people, and I'm one of these people, so I'm not having a go or anything, but have people who have beards and you think you shouldn't really be having a beard. Don't work. Ethan Hawke is someone like that. Ethan Hawke wears a beard, doesn't look good on him, don't bother.
My friend Tim is like that. He's got, not you, Tim, another Tim. He always wears a sort of stubble and he just looks dreadful. Just don't do it. So if you're listening, Tim, actually shave yourself. Right?
Brilliant.
Yeah, if I were to do it, I would be the same. I am incapable of growing a proper beard. But there were quite a few characters like that. I think one of whom was the Gronemeyer, the lieutenant. Yes. Any other? So you mentioned what the
and Hinrich was the radio operator. Again, I think very understated, but just sort of a couple of points where he just sort of stood out. And it's very often, a single line or a raised eyebrow, whatever it is. But as the radio operator and the sonar operator, he was really quite central. And there's quite a few scenes where he's interacting quite closely with Jürgen Prochnow, the captain. So
he gets on well with him, doesn't he?
Yeah. I thought he was very good. But I agree. It's hard to see past Johann because he's so again sort of horribly magnetic in this.
Yeah. Okay, great. All right. Well, moving on now, we are at I think we're at our If Tarantino Had Made It. Now, this must be one. This is one of the few films from the 80s that Tarantino likes.
Yeah, I don't know if he would have made it much different. I just think he would have really stuck to. it's sort of his type of film. I don't, except for the language. But knowing what he did in Inglourious Basterds, he would have probably done it in German.
Well, I was thinking perhaps the introduction of those merchantmen. Maybe he would have collected a few just to add a bit of tension in the U-boat.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah,
or a bit more tension, I should say. Yeah.
I mean, it's hard to imagine that film with more tension, honestly.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, but you've got a couple of subversives on there, Brits causing trouble.
I mean, the thing is that there's a couple of examples of that where they do take, sort of rescued personnel on board, and the rescued personnel very quickly, adopt what we might call, Stockholm syndrome, where, they're so desperate to survive that there's no plotting against their fellow.
Oh, right, they're loading torpedoes into.
Well, I mean, maybe not that, but they're so desperate to survive the whole experience that they just keep their heads down. So that would have fallen then into the category of being a bit unrealistic, I think.
Yeah. Okay. Well, finally, it's our legacy rating, and actually we've done so. This is our 4th submarine special, and I think 3 of them so far. I think the lowest score we gave was 4 for We Dive at Dawn.
Yeah, I mean this is
5.
Yeah, this is 5. I mean, if it was 6, possible to give 6, we would do it.
No.
Yeah. But The Hunt for Red October, I think we gave 5, and Crimson Tide, I think we gave 5. This is definitely
this should be a 6. I'm
yeah, yeah, wonderful. Okay, well that's been it. Wonderful, great stuff. Well, actually, I think this is our final film club on this podcast.
Yeah.
But
there will be another one. So listeners, more to come on this. But Tim, thank you. Roger, thank you.
My great pleasure.
Thank you, guys. Great.
Thanks so much for listening. Links are in the show notes. Please share with friends and family. And if you want to get in touch, you can through X or email history@aspectsofhistory.com. But until then, thank you and good night.